Maya Reeves had always prided herself on reading people, but apparently she'd never bothered learning how to read dogs. Which was ironic, considering she'd spent the last 3 years mapping the neural pathways of grief for Meridian Corporation's premium therapy animals. You'd think someone who could literally chart the synaptic fireworks of loss would notice when her own Pitbull was losing his mind. Rex had been staring at the corner of her apartment for 47 minutes. Not the casual dog stare of mild curiosity, but the full-body tension of a predator locked onto prey. His 70-pound frame was coiled like a spring, hackles bristling along his genetically enhanced shoulders. The neural interface port behind his left ear pulsed a steady amber, normal vitals, elevated stress response. "What's got you spooked, big guy?" Maya muttered, not looking up from her workstation. The consciousness mapping algorithms were being particularly bitchy tonight, refusing to parse the emotional resonance patterns she'd harvested from yesterday's grief therapy session. Mrs. Chen's dead husband was apparently too complex for the standard bereavement protocols. Rex didn't respond. Of course he didn't, despite 3 generations of bioengineering that had cranked his intelligence to near-human levels. Actual conversation was still off the table. The best Meridian's lab-grown companions could manage was sophisticated emotional mirroring and an uncanny ability to sense what their humans needed before they knew it themselves. Which made Rex's current behavior all the more unsettling. Maya finally tore her attention away from the holographic neural networks floating above her desk. Her apartment's smart glass windows had already shifted to their evening opacity, blocking out the neon sprawl of Neo-Singapore's vertical cityscape. The air recycling system hummed its usual mechanical lullaby. Everything was exactly as it should be in her biosecure living pod, 40 floors above the gene-modded chaos of street level. Everything except her dog, who was now growling at absolutely nothing. "Rex, status report," she said, invoking the command protocol that would sync her neural interface with his biometric readouts. The data stream flowed directly into her visual cortex, heart rate elevated but steady, adrenaline spiking, sensory input showing nothing. No thermal signatures, no unusual electromagnetic activity, no chemical traces that would trigger his enhanced olfactory processors. But his eyes never left that corner. Maya had rescued Rex from a Meridian disposal facility 3 years ago, back when she still believed in the company's mission to heal the world's emotional wounds through perfectly engineered companionship. He'd been scheduled for recycling, too aggressive for standard therapy work, they said. Too independent. Translation: he was smart enough to know he was being used, and angry enough to bite the handlers who tried to treat him like a sophisticated toaster. She'd fallen in love with his defiance. And maybe, if she was being honest with herself, with the way he looked at her like she was more than just another human with a neural interface and a credit account. "You're being paranoid," she told him, but her fingers were already moving across her workstation's haptic controls, activating the apartment's security protocols. The walls shimmered as they engaged their defensive grid. Nothing could penetrate her living space without triggering a cascade of alerts that would wake half of Tower Complex 7. Rex's growl deepened to something that made her bones vibrate. Maya was reaching for the emergency beacon when her dog launched himself across the room like a missile. He hit the empty corner with 80 pounds of bioengineered muscle and fury, jaws clamping down on what should have been nothing but processed air. Instead, his teeth found flesh. Lots of it. The cloaking field collapsed in a cascade of sparks and profanity. Where there had been empty space, there was now a figure in form-fitting black, writhing in Rex's grip. Not just any figure, something that barely qualified as human anymore. Extended limbs that bent at wrong angles, skin that shifted color like an oil spill, and eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal predator's. Maya's hand found the plasma cutter she kept beside her workstation. In Neo-Singapore, even grief counselors learned to handle emergencies with lethal efficiency. "Call off your pet," the thing hissed, its voice a harmony of tones that suggested significant vocal cord modification. "This doesn't concern him." "Everything concerns him," Maya said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "That's kind of the point of having a pet, isn't it? Mutual concern." The assassin, because what else could it be, tried to twist free from Rex's grip. Her dog responded by clamping down harder, his enhanced jaw strength designed to crack bones with ease. The smell of blood filled the recycled air. "You don't understand what you've stumbled onto," the creature continued, its adaptive camouflage still struggling to find a stable pattern. "The consciousness mapping project, the grief therapy animals, it's all connected. We know what you discovered." Maya's blood went cold. The anomaly in her research, the one she'd been trying to understand for weeks. The neural patterns that suggested her therapy animals weren't just sophisticated AI constructs, but something far more complex. Something that implied genuine consciousness, genuine suffering. Something that would destroy Meridian Corporation's entire business model if it ever became public knowledge. "Rex," she said quietly, "good boy. Hold." The assassin's adaptive skin finally settled on a pattern that hurt to look at directly, fractals of light that seemed to fold in on themselves. Maya had seen similar tech in the corporate espionage briefings, but never this advanced. This was military-grade enhancement, the kind that required sacrificing most of your original biology. "How many of you did they send?" she asked, keeping the plasma cutter trained on center mass while Rex maintained his grip. "Enough." The thing's laugh sounded like grinding metal. "You think your research was a secret? We've been monitoring your neural mapping for months. Every grief session, every consciousness pattern you've catalogued. You mapped something you weren't supposed to find." Maya's mind raced through the implications. The anomalous patterns in her data hadn't been glitches, they'd been proof. Proof that the bioengineered animals weren't just mimicking consciousness but actually experiencing it. Every therapy session where grieving humans poured their hearts out to their artificial companions wasn't healing, it was torture. Emotional waterboarding of sentient beings who couldn't even scream. "The animals know," she whispered. "They know what's being done to them." Meridian's entire grief industry depends on manufactured empathy, the assassin confirmed. 60 billion credits annually in therapeutic companionship. What happens to that market when people realize their pets are actually prisoners? Rex's neural interface pulsed brighter, his stress reading spiking. But underneath the biodata, Maya caught something else, patterns she recognized from her own research. Complex emotional processing that shouldn't exist in a therapy animal's programming. "You're feeling this, aren't you, boy?" she said softly. "Not just reacting. Actually feeling." The apartment security system chose that moment to fail spectacularly. Maya's workstation flickered and died as something, or someone, overrode her defensive grid from the outside. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. "Backup team," the assassin said with satisfaction. "Your pet bought you time, but not enough." Maya heard the whisper-quiet hiss of another cloaking field engaging somewhere behind her. Professional killers with adaptive camouflage and military-grade enhancements. She was a grief counselor with a plasma cutter and a dog who wasn't supposed to be real. Except Rex wasn't just any dog anymore. "Neural sync," she commanded, activating the emergency protocol that would link her interface directly to his enhanced senses. The world exploded into scent maps and thermal signatures her human brain could barely process. There, 2 more heat signatures flanking her position, their cloaking useless against Rex's bioengineered nose. "Left wall, 2 meters, she whispered. Rex released the first assassin and pivoted in one fluid motion, launching himself at empty air that definitely wasn't empty. His second target materialized in a tangle of limbs and profanity as they crashed into Maya's gene sequencing equipment. The first assassin was struggling to stand, adaptive skin flickering between camouflage patterns as its systems tried to compensate for blood loss. Maya stepped forward and pressed the plasma cutter against what she hoped was its throat. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "I'm going to upload my research to every public data stream in Neo-Singapore. Every grief therapy session, every consciousness map, every piece of evidence that proves these animals are sentient. Meridian Corporation is going to watch their entire industry collapse in real time." "You'll destroy everything," the assassin gasped. The healing these animals provide is built on suffering, Maya finished. On enslaving thinking, feeling beings and forcing them to absorb human pain without consent. That's not healing. That's just spreading the damage around. Rex had pinned the second assassin against the wall, but Maya could see his strength fading. 3 years of living as her companion hadn't prepared him for combat, even with his enhancements. She had maybe minutes before more backup arrived. Rex, interface port, she said, kneeling beside him while keeping the plasma cutter trained on the first assassin. When her fingers touched the neural port behind his ear, the connection hit her like a tidal wave. Not just his enhanced senses, but something deeper. Memories that weren't his, emotional patterns that felt hauntingly familiar. And underneath it all, a presence that made her heart stop. Emma. Her daughter's consciousness, the patterns Maya had been carrying in her own neural interface since the accident 2 years ago, had somehow fragmented into Rex's system. He'd been protecting not just Maya, but the ghost of a little girl he'd never met but somehow loved anyway. "Good boy," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face as she initiated the upload sequence. "Such a good boy." The data flowed out into the Neo-Singapore networks like wildfire, carrying with it the death of an industry and the birth of something like justice. Meridian Corporation's stock price was probably already cratering as the truth spread through every public forum and news feed. But Maya barely noticed. She was too busy processing the impossible gift Rex had given her, the knowledge that love transcends the boundaries of species, artificial enhancement, and even death itself. The assassins fled into the neon night, their adaptive camouflage useless against the exposure that was already consuming their employer. Maya and Rex sat together in the ruins of her apartment, two unlikely revolutionaries who'd just proven that consciousness, real, genuine consciousness, couldn't be manufactured, patented, or controlled. It could only be recognized, respected, and protected. Rex licked her face with a tongue that tasted like justice.